by the thumping post steakhouse shed of a good goddamn, it's the Weekend Crusaders, and the ghosts of horror gaming past hang heavy in the air like the haunted ejaculate of some gypsy-cursed can of Febreze. They demand tributes, blood eulogy, prostration and spectacle, and they will be sated once again here in another Retro Rumble! This week on Retro Rumble, a hidden Dracula smashing gem of a game whose proper introduction will come after this short prologue. Have you not heard the legend of he who rises with the full moon, the legend of the vampire? Well, the story actually happened in England 100 years ago. There was an investigator of the paranormal, a young psychologist named Ferdinand Social. On the night of the full moon, he received a mysterious message while using his Ouija board. Killer vampire, go to Thames. Caution, caution, in the wake of Dracula. You know that son of a bitch, don't you? No? Yeah, have a blood vision. Why are his hands so fucking enormous? What? Christ on the cross! Can't get a bead on the blood-sucking bastard. Like some shit you have to tag at a county fair to win a giant stuffed animal that I have no intention of giving to you. We'll get our shot though, don't you worry. Here, in Master of Darkness, also known as In the Wake of Vampire, back when it first hit the Sega Game Gear in Japan at the dead end of October 1992, with this Master System port chasing its tail in the May of 1993. Published by Sega, developed by Sims, who were essentially an in-house Sega development team at that point, being a collaboration between themselves and Sunritsu, who handled a lot of Sega's early arcade to console conversions, most notably Tetris on the Genesis. Well, goddammit, Dracula's not going to stake himself through the heart, no matter how prolifically you shitpost his Twitter account. Let's get moving here. At that time in London, the rising of the full moon meant the coming of yet another gruesome murder. The following morning would always bring the discovery of yet another body, completely drained of blood. Dr. Social knew that there was something supernatural at the heart of the mystery and began investigating. Calling on the powers of the Ouija board, Social learned that at the Thames River, horrible events beyond human imagination were taking place. Now, who do we know that was kicking around Victorian-era London making a right bloody nuisance of himself by turning women inside out? Noted chimpanzee fornicator Charles Darwin. Your reign of monkey-loving terror ends tonight, Darwin. Dr. Ferdinand Social swears it. Yes, that's totally my real name, and not just one I gave to the police on that shameful evening where I drank gin far past my boundaries of proper behaviour, and so violently doffed my hat to a washerwoman. Such was the lusty design behind my doffing that the bowler touched the end of my nose and the poor woman fell about herself, shielding her body from the salacious gesture as best she could with the fishmonger's bedsheets. I hear she retired to a nunnery for some years before succumbing to madness. Sick, sweat-drenched, doffing-induced madness. They buried her in unconsecrated ground, as the tale goes. Such was the wretched, doffed-bruised state of her soul that she could not rest in the Lord's estate, and that any dog who passes by her grave shall suddenly leap for the hat of his master, flip it upon his own head, and doff ceaselessly for 5 nights and 5 days until it falls down dead. From doffing. This is the shame that I, Dr. Ferdinand Social, my real name, is cursed to bear until the end of times, and so I atone for these deeds. By day, counselling victims of similar vulgar doffings, grand dofferys, and doff and runs. By night, patrolling the banks of the River Thames, stabbing bats, escaped lunatics, and potential rogue doffers in the face with a large axe. Now, how much of that plot did I make up, and how much of it is just a thinly veiled chapter of the many unspeakable, untraceable crimes of my own dark autobiography? Lovelies, you'll never know until I am standing over your semi-conscious body with the devil's fire burning in my heart, but I will tell you this. Master of Darkness leaves out a little chunk of backstory from the manual that seems to tie the plot directly to Bram Stoker's original Dracula novel by making the Count's one-time prisoner and part-time assassin Jonathan Harker, and I quote, your good friend, that hands you a note from another of your occultist acquaintances, a psychic by the name of Julia Arkham, warning you of Dracula's return. Julia's been kidnapped, you see? And this is why I always tell you that you had to read the manuals that came with these older games, Crusaders. It's not just because a bunch of them were the only place you could find a reference to some obscure, unthinkable, one-time mechanic that is never once alluded to over the natural course of gameplay. They give you some pretty vital plot points in the days before 10-minute expository cutscenes were a thing as well. Like, Julia is never once referenced by name in the entirety of Master of Darkness, so when you actually fight her as the second boss of the game and the ensuing storyboard chucks you this spontaneous psychic broad who starts rambling prophecies about haunted cemeteries, you're gonna be thinking to yourself, well, that came out of fucking nowhere. Just like in the ending, alright, Jonathan Harker only ever mentioned one time in Master of Darkness, right at the ending text roll when he gives you safe directions back to England. If you just jump straight into the game, what are you going to be making of that? Holy shit, Jonathan Harker! As if by magic! Who's sailing me back to London? Captain fucking Hook? But you see, it isn't by magic, it isn't out of bloody nowhere, it's right there in the goddamn manual, so read the manual. Told you 101 donkey buggering times, haven't I? Always read the bloody manual. They're good, they help you. There's no shame in it. Thank God the manual's always reminded me to take the occasional break from operating my Sega Master System Entertainment cartridge. Do you know how long it took me to beat Phantasy Star 2? Good lord, I'd have died right there on the living room floor. I'd have eventually mummified myself in my own waste, sustaining myself periodically on whatever insects attracted by the scent of decay were unfortunate enough to wander into my hanging jaw. But enough prattle about manuals and socials and Jonathan Harker's self-serving cameos. Let's tackle the elephant in the room here. Let's say what I'm sure we're all thinking. Is this not just the most barefaced, blatant copy of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde on the NES? Well, the similarities are there, Crusader, absolutely. Both lead characters utilize a cane as a largely futile weapon. You're constantly besieged by gentlemen thugs and dogs. Oh, I'll have to wait. Arr, you wish to hinder me? Snarls Charles Darwin like some sort of pirate or disgruntled farmer attempting to edge past your car on a country lane in whatever field mauling abomination he has seen fit to unleash upon civilized society today. Charles is an idiot and I'm about to blow his face off with a bomb. Kablow! Off to the circus with you, you disfigured freak! That's a neat trick, I grant you. It's all done with wires, though. There's 2 of them, and 4 mirrors. That's no train conductor, that's a ferret in a waistcoat. Quick, where's your wallet? And your wife? So you managed to defeat my Jack the Ripper. That's right, all that has happened here has been under my control. And the things you've seen so far are just the start of the horrors. Go to the House of Wax, if you dare. My waxwork figures will be waiting for you. Perhaps you will be my next wax masterpiece. I need a replacement for Jack the Ripper after all. What? Jack the Ripper? It was that guy the whole time? But Charles Darwin, you know what this is? This is a smear campaign against old Jack. He's a godly man. He'd never stoop to the kind of heresy and floozy murder that you can find that chimp blower engaging in on a nightly basis if you stack several fruit crates and barrels up outside his window to peer inside before his gruff, brutish voice startles you from below and you topple to the cobblestones, hobbling away while doffing your hat with scathing contempt. Go evolve a dick up your ass, Darwin, you profane gorilla rapist. Anyways, how about that elephant chilling by itself in the middle of the room here? Should we give it a poke or what? Alright, enough dicking around. Yes, it's true. Master of Darkness is, in a lot of respects, absolutely identical to Legendary axe for the PC Engine. Look, he's even got an axe right now. Could it be any more blatant in it? Alright, yes, it's Castlevania, isn't it? Yay, all the prizes all at once, burying your happiness quickly turning to fear as your world turns black from the sheer volume of prizes. Master of Darkness could not be any more the lovesick cry of Sega yearning for an installment or a port or anything, goddammit. We'll take anything. We'll have a fucking Castlevania kart racing game. We'll take a Castlevania paint program. Give us some Dracula-based gothic preschool edutainment software. Castlevania basic edition of the night. Castlevania vocabulary expander of blood. Please, please let us in on the sweet Castlevania pie. Could not anymore be the pitiful sound of Sega yearning for Konami's smash hit franchise if it turned up outside the office windows with a boombox and chocolates in a heart-shaped box. Hey, maybe even Wheatus. But bring the boombox too. You know, to drown out Wheatus. If anybody tried to win my heart by bringing fucking Wheatus to within 20 feet of my house, I would sue them. I would sue them in a court of law. I'd start an AMA on Reddit posing as the commanding general of ISIS so that MI6 could track my coordinates and level my street with a fucking airstrike. It is absolutely Castlevania. Looks like Castlevania, sounds like Castlevania, same controls, same stairs, same sub-weapon system, same gothic atmosphere and horror-inspired environments and enemies. You are literally fighting Dracula. There is an almost pixel-perfect recreation of a section in the clock tower where you can use an oversized pendulum to ferry you from one side of the screen to the other. You can even break down walls to find hidden health boosts exactly like the dusty hams of dubious origin in Castlevania. They stopped just short of making them steamed hams in this one and opted for a more straightforward potion instead. So yes, from the floor to the ceiling, the walls to the windows, Master of Darkness is bootleg Castlevania. Steamed hams? Of course, everything in gaming being a tragic rip-off of everything else in gaming is no new concept to anybody that spent longer than a ploughman's lunch following the medium. And Castlevania doppelgangers have been clumsily attempting to creep out the woodwork since just about forever. The year after Master of Darkness' initial release, Rusty showed up on the PC 98, in which you play as a Nosferatu hunting, whip-wielding wank fantasy in sketchy bondage gear, which, you can't cry typical video game misogyny at this time, seeing as Simon Belmont wore it first. And better, if I may be so bold. Traversing suspiciously Transylvania-esque surroundings to put an end to one Bloody Mary, a vampire queen attempting to resurrect the one, the only, you guessed it, Count Monte Carlo. See? God damn it, this is all our own work. Dracula? Who the fuck's... you're talking about that Castlevania game, aren't you? I mean, what Castlevania game? What's Castlevania? I've never even heard of such a title in all my days developing the astonishingly original tour de force I have so named Rusty. What did you call it? Castlemania? Frank Castlemania. What is it? A Punisher fan club? No. Are you making this up? Get out of here. Buy a Rusty and then leave my office. Get out of Konami headquarters and never return. Oh, this. No, don't look. Don't steal my similarly original idea for a stealth game in which you infiltrate a jungle stronghold to destroy nuclear launching mechs. I have stamped copyright symbols all over aluminium sprocket Sturdy and its chain smoking hero, Sturdy Iguana. So don't you... Why am I still talking to you? Get out of Konami. Buy a Rusty. Get out. Don't knock over my unsociable hill promotional cutouts on the way out either. Don't... You son of a bitch. May dodecahedron head devour your soul. Here's probably Julia Arkham that I was telling you about earlier, if you remember. I really hope it's her anyway, because otherwise she just gets kidnapped before the game starts and not one single person turns out to give a shit. She's allegedly a psychic though, so you could argue that she should have seen it coming. This skull has no movement pattern, I swear to God, it's so random that it could fairly pick lottery numbers for you. Sometimes it hits you 6 times, sometimes it just avoids you like you've been eating fistfuls of your own shit. It's a real lucky dip. probably Julia's about to give us a cryptic clue on where to go next here. The cemetery, east of town. After defeating the evil spirits, the psychic girl managed to gasp a warning before falling into unconsciousness. Jack the Ripper was collecting bodies and fresh blood to be split as sacrificial offerings to dark forces. The cemetery, east of town. There was no way to know what the message was warning him about. But Dr. Social had to act quickly, so he rushed there as fast as he could. Well, son of a bitch, there's ghosts and walking corpses rampaging through the streets of London. What do you think a warning about a cemetery is gonna mean? You might as well have called this round Epicenter. I love how the zombies boogie loose from the ground here. Night fever, night fever. This can only be the black work of Count Monte Carlo. That's the vampire's name in Rusty, I don't know what to tell you here. Count Monte Carlo. Christ, maybe something got lost in translation for the Japanese developer. Maybe in Japan, you know, the Count of Monte Cristo is the Count of Monte Carlo, which, for anybody watching who's maybe a touch geographically uninformed, is the easternmost quarter of Monaco, world renowned for the enormous casino that sits there. So there you go, Count Monte Carlo, vampire lord of bloody gambling. How will you ever defeat Siegfried and Roy? Be sure to save your sub-weapons for a titanic showdown with Frankenstein's monster once he finishes his shift at the blackjack table. We can run off Castlevania clones until hell starts up an annual snowman building competition, but you're not gonna get much more blatant an example than Rusty, folks. I can't lie. Except this one, of course. This is absolutely shameless. And I'll tell you why. I will. Take my hand. Journey back with me to the early days, through the mists and ether. See video game history flying past us. Ah, Doc, it's Bubsy! That was close. He didn't scratch you, did he? You didn't... Don't let him touch you. Don't ever let him touch you. Crusaders, we've journeyed back to the early 1980s and the Nintendo Famicom has just been released in Japan. It has zero competition besides a handful of archaic Pong machines. There is virtually no home console gaming scene to speak of. For a number of unfortunate reasons, the Atari 2600 has only just been released there as the Atari 2800, and it is woefully, disastrously outmatched by the Famicom. It sells a handful of units at a ridiculous overinflated price and is never heard from again. Nintendo have essentially gambled their entire company on the success of their new console. The Famicom has cost an utter cash bomb to develop, and to get a favourable deal on the manufacturing costs, they've bought literally millions of components in advance, with the grand plan being to break even on the consoles themselves by selling them cheap and to make all of their profit from their games. Now, at exactly the same time as the Famicom is launching, the same week to be precise, Sega released the SG-1000, and the difference is, tragically for Sega, night and day. The SG-1000 was a comparative embarrassment next to the Famicom, in effect nothing flashier than a tweaked ColecoVision, and Nintendo's gamble of pouring obscene amounts of money into their product development, even just on a purely technical level, had placed them years beyond their competition, and practically won them the 1980s phase of the console war before it even really begun. In fact, it took Sega another 2 years to release anything that could compete with the Famicom. 1984 brought the SG-1002 to Japan, which still couldn't touch the specs on Nintendo's horse, and eventually the Master System, or Sega Mark III, as it was called upon its initial release, hit the stores in 1985. And yet, despite the Master System's hardware finally outclassing its rivals, nobody bought the fucking thing. Nobody gave a shit. Why? Because Nintendo had all the games. And why did Nintendo have all the games? See, when the Famicom was first released, Nintendo didn't really want anybody except their own in-house talent making games for them, because they figured that the major reason that the video game crash of 1983 happened with the Atari was because they were letting any no-talent motherfucker with a brain cell and a coding manual release whatever shit they wanted on the 2600. And people had gotten sick and tired of it, so Initially, Nintendo were very sketchy about letting third-party companies develop anything for them. In fact, in the early days, it can't have been barely anyone besides Namco, Hudson, maybe an arcade porting specialist or two. It was a super exclusive club, and it worked. Helped along, of course, by both Sega and Atari still trying to play catch-up and sling a console together that didn't perform like a fucking potato next to the Famicom. And when they did, when both the Master System and the Atari 7800 loomed on the horizon, Nintendo executed their masterstroke. Now, their policy was that anybody, any third party, could develop games for the Famicom and its slightly underfed but physically more robust international redesign, the NES. The catch was that if you wanted to release your game on a Nintendo console, you had to sign one brutal motherfucker of a licensing deal with them. Take a breather, gang. Boss number 3 incoming. Well, there's no need for that. Try not to get hit by this cheating son of a bitch, I dare you. I double dare you. These bloody fireballs he sharts out. There you go. See, by the time you've committed to an attack animation, you're taking a shot in the back there every fucking time. Yeah, you showed me, didn't you, dickhead? Go fight bloody Superman. The fuck are you bullying me for with your Kryptonian level Super Saiyan bullshit? You get to fight this doofus again at the end of the next stage, but that's indoors, so he doesn't do any flying about. Doesn't trust himself not to take out a ceiling with his face, I guess. The strangely familiar figure who was floating in midair was Count Masson. There had been rumours about the Count, who lived in an old castle far from civilization. It was said that he was studying the black arts. Yes, it seemed that the Count was indeed involved in strange doings. Black magic, full moon, killer. Finally understanding the evil power behind the events, Dr. Social hurried to the castle. Alright, so, these Nintendo licensing deals, not what you'd traditionally call a fair and balanced arrangement, more of a kind of pay us money to wear our shit as a hat type of deal. We're talking 2-year bare minimum console exclusivity rights, obscene minimum cartridge orders, the cartridges for which, naturally, had to be made by Nintendo, mandatory advance payment on everything. It was the third-party publishers assuming all the risk on their own games because the way Nintendo saw it, they'd raked in a small fortune from licensing fees and cartridge orders alone before the game itself had even been released, so why should they give a shit if it failed or not? And for a long time, their involvement began and ended with their monopoly on cartridge production, which allowed them to capitalise on the Famicom's lockout system, whereby anything that was not officially licensed and so granted an authentication chip just would not work. And the few unlicensed companies that did manage such a feat, usually via a voltage spike that temporarily disabled the authentication chip, were thwarted at the gate by Nintendo's beefy legal team, waving their ban hammer around any retailer who dared stock their wares. Things got so bad with it all that the president of Namco even publicly accused them of unethical business practices, to which Nintendo said, well, you don't like it, there's the fucking door, son, best of luck out there. And Namco tried to make things work for a while with the TurboGrafx 16 of all the bloody bedfellows to choose, but the company inevitably felt the heavy financial repercussions of turning their backs on the market leaders who had cornered, at that point in time, an astonishing 85% of all sales in the industry, and were forced into a humiliating public apology before Nintendo would take them back. If any other developers were thinking of mouthing off, they'd certainly lost their bottle after that tar and feathering. Now, of course, the most obvious and maybe the most brutal knock-on effects of the third-party licensing deals was that when the Master System and the Atari 7800 launched, there were no developers left to make any games for them. Atari continued to die the ugly, slow death that its arrogant laziness and its prime had cost it, but Sega got to work porting its own arcade games to its consoles and cloning the shit out of anything it couldn't have legally into its own intellectual properties. Donkey Kong became Congo Bongo, Commando was Rambo First Blood Part 2. Legend of Zelda got turned into a Golden Axe spin-off called Golden Axe Warrior. And as we see most emphatically here, Castlevania became Master of Darkness. Nintendo weren't above delivering their own spiteful kicks to the balls in that department either. The original arcade version of Wonder Boy was developed by Escape, now going by the name Westone, for Sega, who somehow managed to fuck up securing the exclusive home console rights, which Escape then ran off with and sold to Hudson Soft, who then used them to develop an adaptation called Adventure Island for the Nintendo Famicom. You motherfuckers. I mean, to be fair, Nintendo weren't even above ripping off Castlevania on their own console. 8 Eyes is both Castlevania with a crappy pet bird mechanic and a steaming heap of shit. But as far as rip-offs go, it's gotta be said, Master of Darkness is one of my favourites. But check this out for a nice little inventive twist. You've already seen the panic rooms that lock you in with a shrieking alarm, a pulsing light and a spawning river of enemies who you have to cut down to the last before you can escape. But here now we're dealing with a kind of poltergeist attack room where the ghosts and furniture flies at you endlessly until you kill off whatever ghouly or haunted object is controlling them all. In this case, the broad in the bottom right of the screen. Yeah, just gotta wait for a good opening here. Sometimes you can plow right through and catch them unawares as they're just warming up. You don't want to get caught trying to fight your way off the stairs. Although, more than worth stating here, compared to any Castlevania title that was out before Master of Darkness, save for Castlevania 4, which was on a far more powerful console, these controls are an absolute delight. Especially the stairs. My god, the almost erotic pleasure that stirs within me from playing a Castlevania style game and being able to jump on the goddamn stairs. Funnily enough, the ability to jump on stairs showed up in the Castlevania series a year after Master of Darkness was released in Rondo of Blood for the PC Engine. Suspicious! Who hath ripped off whom indeed? Who is True Thief in this den of liars? It's an easier game all around, undeniably. Dr. Social can take one hell of a beating before he finally kills over. I mean, I'm trying here. I'm trying to put in a good performance for you, as honor and pride bind me to do, but I could finish this half asleep. I usually do 1 or 2 dry runs before I settle down to film the Retro Rumbles, or wet runs as the case may be, with the amount of disgustingly shitty mistakes and deaths I get through, trying to find out what I can get away with. But a couple of drops down a bottomless pit aside, I really had to put a good deal of effort into getting myself killed in Master of Darkness. It's incredibly forgiving to first time players. You'll notice a couple of small but welcome departures from the standard Castlevania recipe book here too. Obviously, you got the between level cutscenes, which, alright, aren't perfect, aren't about to take home any literary awards, but they do help keep that gothic atmosphere afloat and drive along that pleasantly morbid plot. The sub-weapons are half cut and dry imitations. I don't think I've used anything besides the bomb this playthrough, essentially Castlevania's axe reskinned, and I'm not likely to swap it out for anything else either. But you've also got the stake, which is your knife substitute, albeit one you can't find until the very end of the game. Then there's the pistol, pitifully weak, cannot be a real firearm, does no damage to anything, fires best wishes and kisses. It's a kiss store, that's the only explanation. And finally, the boomerang, which is kind of like Simon Belmont's cross in that it flies across the screen and comes back to you if it doesn't hit anyone. But it has a nice vertical tilt as you throw it, making it dead useful for taking out enemies a level above you. You've also got a small variety of choices for your main weapon. You're not tied at the wrist to any magical vampire slaying family heirloom whips today, good sir. You start with a crappy little knife, but can quickly swap out to a saber, a cane, or maybe a hammer, it's hard to tell, or an axe, ascending in damage dealing potential in that order. Nice little variable there is that the axe, my personal choice, will slay whatever you swing it at faster, but has a horrible range on it, so you do need to time your swings to an extent. So if you're more comfortable poking away at Dracula's pals at a longer distance, you might prefer to keep hold of the saber, which does half the damage but keeps you a hell of a lot safer with its Mr. Fantastic-esque reach. But do beware, for with the ability to chop and change your main weapon at will, also comes the danger that you'll accidentally pick up the shitty knife again and put yourself at an ugly disadvantage. Now, controls aside, this is a damn handsome game for the Master System, no question. The expanded colour palette of the Master System over the NES does a beautiful job of nailing that gloomy Victorian ambience. Sadly, these last couple of stages do kind of run together as your standard drab castle brick fare, but those early excursions through foggy London and the ghastly House of Wax are early horror gaming pornography, pure and simple. Again, Castlevania would later come to flirt with a Victorian setting, first in Bloodlines and then again in Portrait of Ruin. Bloodlines especially being a fitting tie-in here, as it was, of course, a Genesis game. Sega finally got their Castlevania a mere 2 years after Master of Darkness was released, which was really the beginning of a happy ending for Nintendo's debacle with the third-party licensing contracts. The Genesis did great business in America, which finally gave those developers another option if they didn't want to sign their lives away. Although the Super NES allowed Nintendo to keep an iron grip on a number of exclusives, a large portion of them were Japanese RPGs, reflecting the tastes of the only country where it could revel in its former dominance. Count Massan swings in for another beating here. This is one of those classic guess where the fuck I'm teleporting off to type of boss fights that everybody was messing around with in the early 90s. Now this is actually a fair bit tougher on the original Game Gear version. In pretty much every other respect, Game Gear Master of Darkness is the same as Master System Master of Darkness because, you know, the Game Gear was in essence a portable Master System hardware-wise. It was only really the size of the screen that demanded any kind of a redesign for titles coming out on both systems, so yeah, cry to Dracula, you little bitch. Love it when they beg their masters for more chances to kill you. You remember when that flying shithead Griffin did that in Devil May Cry and he just got fried into a 40-piece family bucket instead? Christ, that was sexy. A strange white light came from Count Massen's fingertip, and the next thing Dr. Social knew was that he was imprisoned inside a dark cage. Dr. Social threw himself against the door in desperation. Again and again he tried, until the door gave way. But now he found himself in the middle of a labyrinth of incredible complexity. It's not that complex. It is a labyrinth though. The old chestnut designed to get you lost, lose all your good weapons and just generally wind you up before the final boss. Check out all the stake pits Dracula's got in his castle. That's living fucking dangerously, that, isn't it? You know another nice little change Master of Darkness makes from its Castlevania blueprints, don't you? You get to play as a hero that doesn't waddle around like he's pinched his lunch off in his drawers. Look at Ferdinand Social. Dr. Ferdinand Social, thank you very much. Your boy's earned that degree, your boy's got schooling. Come on, you're introduced to somebody at a party by their name and job. Whose hand you gonna shake without immediately excusing yourself afterwards to run to the bathroom and scour your palms with bleach? The doctor? Or the fucking vampire hunter? The vampire hunter that only hunts one fucking vampire. If you having a career relies on you doing a really shitty job of killing someone just so you might have a bit of work come up again in half a century when a gang of idiot devil worshippers manages to revive him, you haven't got a career, my man. You got a crush. Oh, Christ almighty, you again. Hee hee, you're brave to come this far, but you can't hope to destroy this place. This is Castle Dracula in the forest of Transylvania. You are trapped in our country. Transylvania! You will never find your way back to your England. No, there is only one way out of here. Through death! Prepare to die! Oh shit, thanks. I was gonna do it myself, but if you're offering... Look, he's got those stakes out again. That's gonna end badly, that is. You can do what the game wants you to do here and clamber all over the fallen bricks to try and get at the count. Or you can just say, fuck off and away with your nonsense and throw bombs at his face instead. Now if you pick the stake sub-weapon up here, you can do some brutal damage to Masan and end this fairly quickly. It does require a bit of platform hopping though, which I'm far too lazy to bother with. There we are. Stakes, crosses, silver bullets, say what you will. Everything goes down to a bomb to the face. Grah! My creatures of the night defeated? This cannot be true. How could you have done this? Appear before me. I call you dead souls. Alright, I think this is meant to be Dracula coming up now. Watch out for the bats who are sick of serving this idiot and are flying off to pastures new. And Dracula's first trick is to make fake copies of himself to confuse you, but only really seems to succeed in confusing himself as he attempts to flee endlessly across the room and into the path of your bombs. Didn't you hear, Drackers? Only way out of here is death. No doors in this motherfucker. When he's nearly dead, he'll figure out you're not buying it and change his tactic, but an axe to the kneecaps will cut that nonsense short. Ah, bloody hell, you're the smartest man alive. How did you ever? Well, I am a doctor. There you go then, Crusaders. That's your lot. Master of Darkness for the Sega Master System, with a stake in its chest and shit in its pants. Get yourself comfy for an ending to be proud of. Now look at this. This is great. Halfway down his death plunge, he tries to turn into a bat and suddenly finds out he's bad at it. Those we've lost this shit. Alright, fucking hell, I'll leave his funeral portrait alone at least. With the rising sun, the darkness began to change to light. Social reached the top of a small ridge and stopped. He looked at the outside of Castle Dracula at last. This was Transylvania, just as Count Masson had described it. The scenery was very unlike that of his native land. The rays of the sun were blocked out by a dark cloud, surely an effect of the magic spell. As the dust cleared, the once solid castle could be seen in ruins. Social descended the mountain and found a road leading to town. Jonathan Harker had given him directions so he could return to England's safety. Thanks to Social, London was free from the curse of the vampire and people could at last walk at night without fear. Now we have electric lights to help us feel safe. Seems as if the horrors of the past will finally fade away, but we must never forget. Dracula's curse cannot be lifted. Dracula may return. The full moon still troubles the human heart. You must always be careful when walking at night when the full moon shines. Yeah, because of werewolves, right? Not Dracula. Jesus, stop taking credit for other monsters' campaigns of terror, you sad old man. Bunch of archaeologists strangled in a tomb with shreds of mummy bandages discovered at the scene. Yes, fear the hand of Dracula! Be careful when walking among the pyramids at night, or an Eastern European vampire might bite you. He just wants attention. He'll put his name to anything. He hangs around on Quora all day claiming responsibility for stuff. What caused the 2007 global recession? Me! I did it! I took all your money and hid it under my castle! Come and fight me for it! Ha ha ha! Why was Mass Effect Andromeda so bad? I turned into a bat and gave the development team rabies! Don't encourage him, don't. This seems like a somewhat callous abuse of a Ouija board, wouldn't you say? Waking the dead up to make them run off the credits for an early 90s Master System game. See, this is why we have violent hauntings. They use this for the password and continue screens as well. Some ghost somewhere got a job, you know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, so have I, and I must go there now. See you next week, Crusaders.